Okay, 7:30, I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Lower Makefield Township Sewer Authority. If we can have a roll call, starting with Greg.
Greg Hucklebridge, Public Works Director.
Barbara Kirk, solicitor for the township.
Fred Ebert, Authority Engineer.
Joe.
Joe Lingle, Authority member.
Scott.
Scott Phillips, Authority member.
And Mr. Weiss. If you can say your name to be onto the meeting records.
We're up to you, Fred.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi, Fred Weiss, Supervisor Liaison.
Phil Tyler, Chairman. Okay. 15 minutes, Fred. I got more paperwork to do tonight.
Well, we still have approval of meeting minutes.
Oh, I apologize. I skipped a line because I'm always excited to get from Fred.
That's right. I think Scott Phillips had a couple of questions. I'll let Scott go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, the first sentence under Stackhouse refers to an ejector station. Now, I'm not familiar with the facilities enough to know if that's an accurate description.
It is an accurate description. It's a basically it's an air bladder station, and that style, although no longer utilized really at all, is actually called an ejector station because it basically ejects it by filling up an air bag like a bladder and discharging it and then refilling it back up with air. So that is actually a correct term.
Okay,
Not very
so there's an
commonly
ejector.
used.
So there's an ejector station at the pump station.
The style of pump station is an ejector style. Normally we call it like a submersible or a wet well, dry well, or a dry pit submersible. This is actually an ejector style. So it's a descriptive term of the type of pump station.
Okay, so that probably answers my next question, which wasn't sure if the last sentence in that same section, which refers to the construction of the pump station, is accurate. So to the extent that the pump station is an ejector station, and not just a component of a pump station, then the construction of the pump station is probably an adequate description as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but it's accurately
Okay.
written.
Okay. All right, and then the next section is under contract SWR 21-3. I'm just wondering if I think I know what the person was saying when they refer to the high variable will be the amount of, basically saying there's a lot of uncertainty in the cost. I think that's what the discussion was at that time.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think Fred was trying to explain where that expectation was going.
Okay. So just the factor that could cause the actual cost to vary significantly is okay.
Yep.
Okay, that's fine if everyone understands that. And then the last one is just a kind of a wording thing. Is under the Silver Lake Pump Station section, there's a phrase, if they complete the sale. I was just wondering if, for clarity, it could be rephrased as if the sale of the system is completed.
That works.
That would be accurate.
Those were the only ones. So it was making a motion for an adjustment to reflect that change.
Do I have in a second?
I can second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And to be clear, the change would be making if they complete the sale to be rephrased as if the sale of the system is completed. Correct?
Yes, that's what he said.
Okay. Just to
All
be
right,
clear
good. Thank
for
you.
the meeting, the change in the meeting minutes and then our future meeting minutes as well. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from May 13th, 2021?
Motion to
make-
approve the minutes. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, but I'll second your motion.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Aye, Fred.
Okay, before we get to the PowerPoint, just a quick update on the Stackhouse Pump Station. All the trees were remarked. The contractor is now scheduling for the tree removal and ENS. All the equipment, as we previously said, has arrived. So we are pushing them very hard to get this done while we have this great weather window of dry weather and stability out there. Now, if we can start the PowerPoint presentation, I will go over the next two items. We received bids yesterday for the Silver Lake Pump Station and the Buck Creek cured in place pipeliner contracts. These are contracts SWR 21-3 and 21-4. They are the last two contracts as part of the 2021 Lower Makefield Township sanitary sewer budget line items for the township. Next slide, please. First contract is contract SWR 21-3. This is the Buck Creek Interceptor sanitary sewer cured in place pipeliner. We received 5 bids. The bids range from $215,425 to a high of $369,738. The budget was $283,250. The engineer's estimate was $247,450 without the 10% contingency, $271,975 with the 10% contingency. The low bid was in the amount of $215,425. It was in Vortex Services. Once again, the engineer's estimate and the 2021 budget, it fell within the range of the bids that were received. The two lowest bidders were within 10% of each other, as well as the engineer's estimate without the 10% contingency. There was a wide range of bids as we received on the previous contract, basically due to the location of the work and the equipment necessary to access this area. The low bidder is the same low bidder as we had last month on contract SWR 21-2. So they now have one significantly larger project that can complete it at the same time. They also have increased buying power of the liner because they're buying more. They're only going to have one mobilization, and they'll basically be able to complete it as one overall project. We previously reviewed Vortex Services as part of the last contract that they were awarded. So our recommendation is to award to Vortex Services LLC. And I'll entertain any questions that the board has on this contract.
Fred, I'm sure I know the answer to this. And you mentioned about the buying power and being able to do it, mobilize one time. But from a scale of the company, they have the capacity to take on two sizable projects concurrently.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're a very large company.
Thanks.
And once again, these guys were bidding this because they're in Freehold, New Jersey, that they don't have that much windshield time. And the advantage to their employees is that they're home every night with their families rather than having to travel. Whereas most of the other ones were 3 to 4 hours away. Not 3 hours. Mechanicsburg is probably 2.5, 3 hours.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Scott?
No, I was just reviewing the minutes from the last meeting. There was a reference to another large contract in Horsham Township.
Yes.
But again, they're so big that even a project like that would not have any bearing on their capacity.
And they've completed that project already.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I mean, while this is a big contract, it's weeks of work, not a month, not months of work.
Any other questions? Joe, Scott? So Fred, you want us to make a motion to go with Vortex?
Yes, if the board will be so inclined, will be a motion, recommendation to award to Vortex Services LLC in the amount of $215,425 for contract SWR 21-3.
I'll make a motion to move forward with that recommendation for Vortex Services as Mr. Ebert just stipulated.
Do I have a second?
10 seconds.
All in
10
favor?
seconds. Aye.
Aye. All right, Fred, it's done.
Yep. Next slide. The second contract for your consideration tonight is contract SWR 21-4. This is the Silver Lake Pump Station upgrade. This is the one that I was very concerned about. The costs of we're going to exceed based upon material costs. We, however, caught lightning in a bottle again. We only received 2 bids. The bids range relatively widely, with the engineer's estimate basically splitting the difference as well as the budget. The low bid was $233,630 to the high bid of being $449,500. The 2021 budget was $360,500. Engineer's estimate without the 10% contingency is $319,500. With the 10% contingency is $351,450. The low bid was in the amount of $233,630. The low bidder was Blooming Glen Contractors. Once again, the engineer's estimate fell within, the wide range of bids. This is a unique circumstance where Blooming Glen, once again, we have a bidder that likes to work in Lower Makefield. They recently completed the Brookstone pump station with minimal to no change orders. And they were in a unique situation where 3 things happened. Number one, it perfectly fit their schedule where they had an opening in there that they were able to go in and do this so that it filled a void in there. Whereas a lot of contractors are relatively understaffed. They are adequately staffed, but unfortunately, it's a big schedule to fill. They have 2 other major items, well, 3 other major things that came up. Number one, they own their own bypass pumping equipment. The difference, they were over $100,000 cheaper on bypass pumping for 2 reasons. Number one, they own their own equipment. Number 2, they coordinated with the township traffic safety officer, and they're able to close a section of the road for 2 days down here so that they don't have to truck their everything away. They can actually pump it and close the road and have their pumping equipment out there. Basically, we have to isolate the wet well, because it's a wet well to a dry well. The isolation valves from the wet well to the pumps don't work and they leak. So we have to totally bypass the wet well and pump out of a very small manhole rather than a very large there. They're able to bring in 4 or 5 pumps, set them up, and be able to bypass pump during that entire time rather than try to truck it away to install not only their emergency bypass connections, but also their change out those 3 isolation valves. Very few companies could afford to do that or innovative enough and take the time enough to sit down with the township and work through being able to do that prior to a bid. And that really led them down there. The other thing that they were able to do is they own their own machine shop. So Blooming Glen is a part of the Haynes and Kibblehouse family of companies, which own quarries and many things. Well, they have their own machine shop. So they can upgrade the pumps, which is replacing the impellers, replacing the bearings, replacing the gaskets, all inside their own shop, because they do that for all their own mechanical work, but for all their large equipment. So they have a completely staffed machine shop. So rather than having them take the pumps out to a third party and be subject to their schedule, they can do it at the same exact time that they're replacing the piping and valves. The other thing that they have, which is unique, is that because they went so aggressively after this job, when they buy fittings, they buy tractor trailer loads of fittings because of the large nature of their company. So they bought them before these price escalations, and they're pricing it at pre-price escalation costs. So there were fittings that you could buy 6-8 months ago for $2,500 that now cost $14,000. They put them in at that. They told me they were going to go very, very aggressively after this. I was obviously concerned about this. So we had a direct conversation not only with our estimator, but with the head of their department to make sure they didn't miss anything and they were comfortable with the bid being that low. So with that being said, they did a very good job on the Brookstone pump station. I'll entertain any questions from the board on this contract.
Fred, you mentioned about the bypassing. It's great to be able to use all their own equipment and kind of set it up and leave it and let it run. Is there an expectation that they would need to have that bypass, those pumps being run continuously throughout the job until the valves are replaced and the piping is replaced? I mean, is there a noise situation if it's going to be running 24 hours a day, or is it just during certain instances of the project?
No, it'll be during the entire thing. But what they're trying to do is to be able to get their, once they have the bypass set up, to be basically in there for less than 1 work week. That they're going to bring 3 crews in here, gantry trains. Now, it's all going to fit back together in there. They do, and on Brookstone, they utilized electric pumps so that there was minimal noise. Depending upon the flows, they will most likely, they'll start with the electric pumps. But if we get a gully washer like we had last night, they're going to have to turn the diesel pumps
diesels
on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And the diesels are going to run for a week for the residents. And they run 24 hours a day. They, I mean, they're not quiet. I mean, they sound like a lawnmower running. So you're going to have sound of a lawnmower running all night long, but it's the only way we can do it. And, right now, until we had this bypass, until we install this bypass, it would just have to flow into the creek right now. If we had a major issue, there is no bypass connection. That's one of the main purposes of this.
Sure.
And it's a ticking time bomb until, all of the, because none of the isolation valves work. So you can't even take a pump out once it burns up. You can't even take it out, without flooding the dry well. So,
yeah, I was thinking hopefully it's during a dry period. Hopefully they can use the electric bypass pumps, get it done. But if it does become wet, is there a mechanism? There's a need to be a mechanism for notifying residents just so that you're not getting nuisance calls about the neighbors running a lawnmower in the middle of the night. They know it's going to be running.
What we did on the Brookstone pump station, we had no complaints at all, was we posted in all the adjoining, the schedule, frequently asked questions about it, that we put, my cell phone's actually on that sheet, so they know what to expect. We had no issues at Brookstone, but we only had to turn the emergency generator or the emergency pumps on, I believe, 1 time, on that.
Actually, it might have been twice, but we
Okay.
were able to get the electric running again pretty quickly. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like overnight. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I can't control the weather. Right now it's awesome. The flows are really down, things are good. Once it's scheduled and they're up there, I can't control the weather. So we will at least make them, notified about that. But, unfortunately, if it happens in the middle of the night, it happens in the middle of the night,
Sure.
So it's not like I can give the residents a heads up. Now, if we do see a wet weather window coming up, hopefully we can schedule around it, because they're not.
Any other questions?
Is there a minimum number of bids? Or is there a reason why? I don't even know if it's considered a low number of bids, but is there a minimum?
There is not a minimum. It just has to be publicly advertised in there. So you can have 1 bid and award it, as long as, at the direction of the board. So no, it's not. And we called a lot of contractors to get them interested in this. This is a very
Mhm.
specialty job because it's 40 feet down in the wet well and you have very heavy equipment. So it needs specialty rigging in there. So I was shocked that I only got 2. I honestly thought I would have 4, but it's not uncommon.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, Fred, what's your motion?
My recommendation is to award contract SWR 21-4 to Blooming Glen Contractors Wastewater Division in the amount of $233,630.
I'll make a motion to recommend contract SWR 21-4 as just described by Mr. Ebert for consideration by the
And
board.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Fred, you got it all.
Yep. That completes the screen. Next 2 items on the agenda, I'm going to tag team with Barb on. This is the recommendation to acquire the McVan low pressure force main. Some background on this. This is on Edgewood Road. In the past, the Township Board of Supervisors condemned the right-of-way along Edgewood Road in order to provide additional right-of-way for what was going to be a proposed development. That development never happened. A condition of that condemnation of the right-of-way was that if there were ever improvements made in that right-of-way, that the township would provide public sewer to 3 residents that lived along this road. The development never happened. However, there have been improvements that were made to this low pressure or were made in there. And as a requirement of the settlement agreement, as well as the sale of the sewer system, we need to comply with all settlement agreements that we have outstanding prior to conveying the sanitary sewer system to Aqua, Pennsylvania. What had happened in the meantime was the McVan property had installed a low pressure force main from their house over to Fox Court,
Fox Hollow Drive.
Fox Hollow Drive, to service their house due to a failing system at the time. Well, that triggered the settlement agreement, as well as our obligations under the sale of the sewer system. So that was privately installed. So we have to, in order to service the residents on either side of this house, who have the same settlement agreement with the township, we have to first purchase this low pressure force main. The low pressure force main was installed at a cost of approximately $26,298. I did a construction cost estimate of what it would cost to install that low pressure force main, and it was slightly greater than that using today's dollars. Therefore, it is cheaper for us to obtain that existing low pressure line rather than to go out and install our own one to satisfy the settlement agreement. So what we're looking for is a recommendation from the sewer authority to acquire the existing low pressure force main in order to comply with the settlement agreement.
I would like to see that agreement.
I've reviewed it. It was part of the condemnation action that was filed by one of the property owners when the township in the late 1980s condemned the properties for the expansion of the roadway and any other improvements. One of the property owners filed a claim against the township for lack of appropriate compensation as a result of the condemnation. It lasted in the court system for about 10 years. There was a 1996 settlement agreement reached at that time, indicating that when the township does the road improvements or installs any sort of sanitary sewer line providing public sewer system, a connection was to be made available to the adjacent property owner. When the McVans, who sit in the middle of 3 properties on Edgewood Road, purchased the residence and started rehabbing the residence, they laid the sewer line in the right-of-way, which then triggered that homeowner who had the agreement with the township to move forward with making a claim that the township needed to provide him with the connection. The plan had always been to install public sanitary sewer lines along Edgewood Road, especially in light of the potential development that was happening to the east, or northeast, I should say, southeast, which was the old Harris track. I don't know if you gentlemen are familiar with that, but that Harris track contains part of lands that are environmentally need of remediation. And for the last, I'm going to say, good 30 years, this track has been back and forth as to being approved for development, and something happened because of the environmental assessment. In any event, because everything was happening simultaneously, there's a separate settlement agreement with the one property owner saying that the township would provide the sanitary sewer connection when the lines were installed. The other property on the other side has a letter that was issued to him and his mortgage lender indicating that sewer system and connection would be available, which was 15 years ago. And that man has had monies sitting in escrow by the bank waiting for that connection to occur. And there was a representation by the township that that connection would be made within a few months after he had obtained that mortgage over 15 years ago. So long and short of it is, after reviewing all of the condemnation pleadings, after reviewing all of the documents, looking at the legal issues facing the township, and after having numerous discussions, it was decided the best course of action would be for the township to acquire the sanitary sewer line installed by the McVans that runs from their house up to the easement, and the line installed on the property on Fox Hollow Drive, which was done part of the Yardley Estates development. And then, because the other property owner on the other side needs the sanitary sewer connection, to run the line at the township's cost to provide a sewer connection for that other property. This was something that should have been done many years ago, and it just sat and languished because I think everybody was anticipating that all of the public sewer system would have been installed by the development that would have occurred on the Harris track, that has constantly come in, but then has died on the vine for one reason or another.
So there's no hookup fee for the
It's all part of
the other side.
it was all part of an agreement. Nope.
Jeez.
Yeah, sorry, Phil, continue. Yeah.
Go ahead, go
No,
ahead.
And just so you gentlemen understand, part of this was all because there were claims raised that when portions of those frontages were condemned by the township has an obligation to pay what's called estimated just compensation. Property owners had the right to file appeals saying the township didn't pay sufficient compensation for that. And all of this was the result of settlement negotiations in lieu of, I guess, the township having to make additional monetary payments.
Well, this is new to me. Never came to the board, so that was something whoever did.
It was done in 1986. Was the initial condemnation done by the township. As a result of that condemnation and it being litigated with one of the property owners for almost 10 years, the township made the settlement. I don't know what involvement, if any, the sewer board or the authority had in this. because this was all triggered by the township, and this is eventually the settlement that occurred.
Yeah. If they have the agreement, then we have to abide by the agreement.
Yeah, and trust me, I not only searched township records, I actually went to the courts and got copies of the documents that were filed with the courts, just so I could verify everything.
So we basically have to hook up the other homeowner. What are you looking at cost-wise for doing that, Fred?
We have to extend the sewer line back to one property, and then provide a low service lateral to the right of way of the right of way line, and then provide a second. So that way, if you look at them in the middle, the one to the left, we have to extend up and provide a lateral service to them. The one to the right just needs a service because the low pressure mains in front of them. That's the item. That's the next item, is to bid that out. And the estimated cost of that is around $13,000 for directional drilling and installation of the lateral.
So buying it and the cost of doing that, we're
40 grand.
over $40,000.
Yes.
Roughly.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm checking on something. I think they have to pay a tapping fee, though.
That's what I thought. They have to-
Yeah, no, I think they still have to pay the tapping fee. I think I spoke too quickly. I think it was the township was obligated to provide the connection ability for it and the grinder pump or whatever it is, because had the system been installed by the township at the time it was done, we may not have needed grinder pumps for them.
So,
But I'm pretty sure they all have to pay the tapping fee.
Well, when we did Edgewood Village, they all had to pay the tapping fees.
Yeah. So give me one quick second. I'm
I
double
believe-
checking my note.
I do believe that the McVans paid that tapping fee, and that's not part of the reimbursement.
Well, that would be that.
No.
Yes, then.
No. So, but we do have to supply grinder pumps for all three of them, because the original, concept was that it would be gravity sewer flowing towards the Harris tract. And
Mhm.
instead it's low pressure coming back the other way. Because that wouldn't have been anticipated, and to avoid any future litigation, it was decided that we would provide grinder pumps for all three. The reimbursement of the grinder pump for the McVans that own it, the Hines is, property owner to the right and property owner to the left, we would provide them with a grinder pump.
Right, and specs and installation instructions, but they have to do the tapping, they have to do the connection themselves, and they have to pay the tapping fee that was required at the time of connection.
Yeah, so we're not doing anything on the private land. Our obligation stops at the township right away. They have to do the installation, the decommissioning of their existing on-lot sewer system, but we are dropping off on their property a grinder pump, an E1 grinder pump.
Right, and the only property that has the on-property septic system are the Hines, which are the property from where the McVan is. They're the ones in between McVan and the Yardley Estates. The house on the other side does not have any sanitary sewer system of any nature, and that house is vacant. And the problem is their mortgage lender anticipated the sanitary sewer connection in order to get a UNO approval for them to get into the house and make other additional repairs. And that's been hanging out since at least 15 years.
Mhm. Joe, you have any questions?
So just on this, on the 20, it sounds like there's not a lot of wiggle room here. It's a commitment was made, but the $26,000 section, Fred, that you're recommending we just take that and pay for it as opposed to install our own. Is there any been? That was installed privately. I mean, do we know what kind of shape it's in? Is there any liability on our side to make sure we're not just spending $26,000 and have to redo it if there's issues with it?
Well, it is, it was directionally drilled, high density polyethylene, and it was fused pipe. What we will be doing was, once we do our extension, we will be pressure testing the entire force main. But no, there's no form of inspection, but it's operational. I have seen no issue. It's it's probably set up for 200 PSI and it's probably operating at somewhere around 8 PSI. So I really see less. I'd be much more worried about it if it wasn't fused pipe. But obviously, you're buying it as is, but it's functioned properly for 2 years.
2 years
probably.
at least.
Okay, so
at
it's
least.
so low risk then.
Low risk.
And just so everybody knows, the line was installed. All permits were applications were submitted. All permits were issued. Plans were provided. Specs were provided. So there is all that information had been provided to the township.
Okay. It wasn't cousin Bill with the
No, it wasn't.
ditch switch. Yeah.
No.
No.
Great.
Yeah.
Scott, you have any questions?
I'm trying to think about this location. It could be in my backyard if I'm thinking about it correctly. Was there a pipe installed in the front yard of one of these homes within the last 6 months?
It wasn't installed in the front yard. It was, so if you're on Edgewood Road driving from McCaffrey's Market towards the township, you pass Yardley Estates. Right next to that, on the right-hand side, is a large 2-story brick front building facing Edgewood Road. And then you come across 3 other houses. The next house is set back. It's got like a white frontage. It's sort of catty corner. Next to that is a newer gray 2-story building. And then the third one looks like a 1 or 2-story white exterior building that is vacant. Those 3 that I just described, the vacant, the new gray one,
Yep.
and the one that's white catty corner, which is owned by the Hines, those are the 3 properties that are affected. So what happened was, one of the property owners made a claim that the line was being installed in their front yard, but technically, and please don't ask me to explain this because it's extremely difficult to go through the whole process. Technically, it was installed in the right-of-way area that was condemned by the township. The problem is the way the settlement agreement was worded, certain documents were supposed to be exchanged and recorded that hadn't been. So there was a whole big rigmarole over it. But at the end of the day, it's in the township's right-of-way of Edgewood Road. And then whatever the line is from the house to the right-of-way is what was recently installed. And I think it was done actually, they submitted permits in late 2019. So it would have been probably 2008. Do you remember, Greg?
I think it was 18 because we actually got
18.
this back. The zoning thing was actually October 29th, 2019.
Okay.
So,
Fred, is this what we're looking at here? Are you seeing my screen?
yes, I am.
Is
And
it
you
these-
see the
is it these
driveway that
3 here?
goes-
Yes.
Now,
Yeah,
it's
is there?
actually, it actually splits that.
No, it's there.
That's
Hines
it. That's those
property
3.
is to the left of that long driveway.
No, Hines is on the right of that.
On the
All
right
3
of
are
that.
right there in a row.
Right
Yeah,
there.
right there. Yeah.
Yep, those 3 right there. And the one in the middle is the one that was completely rehabbed, and they're the McVans, they're the ones that installed the line out to Edgewood, and then it turns left and it goes up Edgewood Road towards where you see Fox Hollow Drive, the curve. The house in the middle at that curve right there has an easement with a sanitary line in the rear yard. That's where they made the connection.
Okay, so they tapped it into here and came back. into
Yep,
this way.
yep.
And
We're
the
actually
planning of the low pressure line going in started in like 2017, I think, because that was before we had a different township manager at the time. Just
And because of the age of the settlement agreement and everything involving those 3 properties on Edgewood Road, when the property owner submitted the paperwork, everybody was under the assumption that all had been taken care of.
right. It was just a normal right of way at the time was the assumption. And then
Right.
lo and behold, it turns out that
It
there was an
wasn't done.
outstanding settlement that needed to be fulfilled.
Correct.
We also are obtaining there's a private easement on that 701 Fox Hollow property we are converting that private easement to a public sanitary sewer easement as well.
Mhm.
Any more discussion? All right, Fred, you want to make your commotion?
I think we're looking for two recommendations. The first is the recommendation to acquire the McVan low-pressure sewer system. I don't know if we want to say the amount or not, Barb.
No,
No.
and it's not the system, it's actually the force main
Force
located
main.
within the right of way, so we're not
Force main within
taking.
the right-of-way.
Mhm.
Within the right-of-way and also on the 701 Fox Hollow Drive property.
All right, so I want to make a motion.
Is it possible for me to not vote on this? I just don't have my hands around it at this point. Do you need my vote?
No, you can recuse yourself. Would it be a 2-0 vote then?
201, you can abstain.
It's very, very presumptuous of you, Bob.
Okay, assuming it goes that way.
I'll make a motion to
Acquire the McVan.
acquire the McMahon low pressure force main within the right of way.
And necessary easement on.
Necessary easement.
I'll second it. So you have 2 in favor and 1 abstention. Okay.
And is there a second part of this that we also have to make?
Yes.
Yes.
A second recommendation to bid the extension of the existing low pressure force main on Edgewood Road to provide public sewer access to the 2 additional properties in accordance with the settlement agreement.
I'll make a motion to bid that work out as just described by Mr. Ebert.
I'll second it. Because Scott, you're not going to vote on that?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, all in favor? Joe and I.
Aye.
Okay, Fred.
Yep, just so the board's aware of this does not need to be publicly bid because it's under 24,000. So it just needs 3 written quotations, which we'll be obtaining now that we had this recommendation.
All right.
Okay.
That completes my report, Mr. Chairman, unless the board has any additional questions.
I have none.
For me.
Barbara, you have anything to say to the board?
No, I think I pretty much talked myself
Yeah,
tired.
you covered everything. Any other business, Greg? Anything to report?
I just wanted to add that we'll be having our next meeting is planned to be on June 17th at 7:30 p.m.
All
June
right.
17th. Okay.
Royce, you have anything to add to the board?
Nope, everything's good. Thanks, Phil.
Okay.
Do we have a reason to have the July meeting, Greg?
Actually, probably do for 2 reasons.
Okay.
One, even though the Brookstone pump station is done, I have finally been able to get the cooperation of the homeowners association, and they should be sending me the fully signed easement agreement sometime next week. They were meeting this week, so we'll need to have the board recommend acceptance and approval of that. And then for the Yardley Oaks pump station, again, another, I don't know how this occurred, but the township owns all of the open space where that pump station is located. And that little pump station is still owned by the original property title owner. And I cannot find that person. So we're actually filing an action through the courts to get title to the pump station, because that little tiny piece still shows up in the name of the original developer from many years ago.
Who is the developer?
It was
Road.
Road, yeah.
Road. Yeah.
Road, thank you.
Check Florida. He might still be there.
You know what? I've sent out letters. I've sent out notices to the postal service. I've checked the Department of State. Somebody, a Bernard Grainer, who is the father of Marshall Grainer of Grainer Homes, signed the original plan, and I went back to them. I mean, I've short of hunting somebody down, by foot. I don't think they're in existence anymore.
No, I know they're not in existence anymore, period. They haven't built homes since. So. But,
Yeah, they just never have formally dissolved according to the the state site. So
yeah.
the only way to do this is to file an action in Doylestown, which we're doing, to get an order from the court saying that the township legally owns that pump station.
All right, well, we'll have that. So with no further business, can I get someone to call for an adjournment?
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting tonight.
Second, anyone second?
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We thank you all for coming to the meeting and wish you a safe Memorial Day.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Everyone.
Happy
Enjoy.
Memorial Day.
Guys.
Appreciate it.